Hey guys, what's going on? Watomarmelon here today, and today I'm going to be bringing you another market watch for September 8th, so I'm excited to bring you guys this one. We're going to be looking at a lot of vintage stuff primarily today, starting off with one of my favorite cards of all time in Cyber Dragon Ultimate Rare out of Cybernetic Revolution. So this card does have two Ultimate Rares, and we're going to look at both of them today. But just looking at near mint first edition sales, if we go back, we haven't really seen any on TCG Player within the past 3 months. And there's a reason for it. I think this actually extends past 3 months. Near mint first editions, you can just find graded copies of this card for cheaper on eBay. For example, there's a BGS 8.5. For I think $800 with best offer available. If you look at the near mint first edition prices, you wouldn't be able to tell that because near mint is actually a lower classification than something like a BGS 8.5, although obviously the subgrades do matter when it comes to condition sensitivity. But you can see that people are trying to sell these things for almost $1,200. You can get a PSA 9 for $1,200. I don't know why anyone would buy something raw off of TCG Player for that amount. So, you haven't seen any sales, and I don't anticipate there being any sales anytime soon at these sorts of prices. But it's pretty clear that this is a card that has super, super high demand. And it seems as though, as people thinned out their collections over the past couple of months, this is not a card that they thinned out. It seems that people who had this card in their collection, this was a card that was genuinely meaningful to them. I think on the whole, more people were thinning out their collection than were acquiring tons of new cards or doubling or tripling their collection size. And I think that this is a card that's stuck in a lot of people's collections because it's their favorite card. Moving on, we have the other one, the other version. It's kind of the dark version with Cyber Dragon Ultimate Rare out of OTS 16. A really incredible card, I must say. Like, this is a really, really good looking card. This is a card that is starting to drop down into the range where I might pick it up. Where if you look at the near mint price, you can see that it's $85. Although you look at the trajectory, this card has done nothing but just go down in price. And you do see some recent sales, but it seems as though these tournament packs that were, I think, 15 onward, there were so many of them printed that it's kind of hard for these tournament pack ultimate rares to hold the sorts of prices that people want them to hold. And so OTS 16, you have this incredible ultimate rare Cyber Dragon alternate art. Where do you guys think this will end up? I mean, it only seems to continue to go down from here. But how low can this go? I imagine this can't be a $50 card anytime soon because people will pick this up in bunches. If I see this at $50, I will be picking them up in bunches. But you have Health Points TCG, Gold Star seller with 99% feedback, 99.9% feedback, and they still have almost 20 copies left. Someone else has a playset here. There are people with just stacks of these things, and I think they're struggling to get them off their hands. So that's something to look at. Next up, we have some God cards. We're going to be going through the GBI Secret Rare God cards. You have Slifer the Sky Dragon. You can see an unverified seller at 300 even, and then you have 330 and onwards. Honestly, these sorts of cards, I would much rather just pick up a graded copy than deal with the shady sellers that you find on TCG Player. If you guys haven't seen my most recent video on my main channel, make sure to check that out. And if you just want to hear the rant, skip to the end where I talk about sort of the scam that TCG Player sellers that have super high feedback are able to run. It's kind of unfortunate. Well, it's definitely unfortunate, but I don't want to have to deal with that on a card of this magnitude. So I'd prefer to just buy a graded copy. And honestly, I think you could get an 8 or a 9 from something like CGC for much less than this. So I don't know why you would fork over $350 for this card on TCG Player. Next up, we have Winged Dragon of Ra. This is a little bit cheaper at $240. You can see that these God cards were also just, in recent time have just plummeted in price. All the cards we've looked at besides the first Cyber Dragon, which kind of just doesn't have any sales, like people really aren't buying this card on TCG Player, they've all gone down significantly, and they seem to continue to go down in price. Next up, we have Obelisk, same price as Raw, basically, and as you can see, this one has also taken quite a bit of a tumble recently in recent months, although, before that it was kind of flatlining, trying to hold on. Although, you look at the yearly trend, what do you know? The price has really gone down since the peak kind of in late 2021. Next up, we have Tactical Masters, looking at something that's a little less vintage, one of the more recent sets. I really do love the collector rares. For me, I can't really justify competing as a buyer with people who need these cards to play the game. I mean, if you haven't seen the Anti-Spell Fragrance collector rare, it's an insane collector rare. I actually knew that this was going to be an insane collector rare because the OCG has this as a collector rare, and it's much, much cheaper. So I got one of those for like $10. I think actually it was much less than $10. But I picked one of those up. I've since sold it, but I was just amazed by how the collector rare looked. And it looks even better in the TCG. If you didn't know, most collector rares actually look better in the TCG than they do in the OCG. Not all, but most do. And Anti-Spell Fragrance is no different. It looks incredible in the OCG, and it looks even better in the TCG. And as you go down, a lot of these cards are really struggling to hold on. Cosmic Cyclone, of course, it's going to struggle to hold on. It has an ultimate rare printing. Scapegoat, there's a lot of hype around this one, mainly from Ruxin and others. I'm not saying it's bad. I think this is a cool looking card, but there's not a whole lot to get excited about as a collector in Tactical Masters if you mainly collect vintage stuff. And if you look at something like Scapegoat, oops, I opened the wrong thing. Let me just look at what the ultimate rare. You can see that the collector rare is only dropping from here and is already at $37. If we look at the ultimate rare, doing a little on the fly looking up, you can see that it's at an OTS pack 8, so it's not that old. And they printed an ultimate rare and then they hit it again with a collector rare, which you can see that really, did some damage to its value. I believe that spike is due to the ban list, and you can see that it's really falling out from there. Tons of copies at the 67, 68 range. This is a cool card. I have a playset of these in Euro print, and they look incredible. If you haven't seen this card before, I do think this is the most. It's my favorite version of the Scapegoat, and something to note about Scapegoat is that it was originally printed and started at Joey, so as a super rare. So it doesn't have that high rarity original printing that would solidify its original printing as the copy to get. And because there isn't that, I go after the ultimate rare. I know there's a retro pack version. Actually, we can look at that right now. If we search high to low, you can see ultimate rares at the top, but I believe there's a retro pack. Yep, retro pack 1 ultra rare. No one's even buying these things. I mean, personally, I've never been a huge fan of sort of retro pack 1 and 2, and then Dark Legends and DRO 4. I mean, these reprint sets are cool, but the sort of insane prices that reprint sets try to command, to me, it doesn't make sense. Where I don't find anything iconic about Retro Pack 1. It's a really cool set. I'd love if it was more easily available to open, because I think it has a lot of awesome cards that would get people back into the hobby that they remember from when they were younger. But as you can see, there isn't even a near mint English copy, because this was only printed in Europe, I believe. So it's difficult to find. Moving on, we have Dark Magician Girl, Dark Side of Dimensions Movie Secret Edition. It's a card that's kind of been fluctuating recently, although if you look at the general trend, this is one that has gone down slightly over the past 6 months, as have a lot of cards. You can see that you still have some available at around $11 to $12 in near mint first edition condition. Really, really cool card. I think this is a really pretty card. I'm not a huge fan of Dark Magician Girl, to be completely honest. Certainly not as big of a fan as a lot of other people are. But, Dark Magician Girl, to me, this is one of the best artworks, and I think that this secret rare really, really pops. This is one that I've considered picking up a large quantity of to try and grade, because the PSA 10 versions of this card sell for like $200, $300. I mean, you can do the math here. If you can buy, copies at $12, I haven't looked at sort of the likelihood of getting a 10, but I imagine there's some money to be made, although this card's been out for long enough that you imagine other people would have realized this. This is something that, like, none of these sorts of plays are, not obvious to people who are looking for plays. And so you imagine that there might be a reason this guy has 5 of these sitting around. There's a very good chance that this person, they don't have a hobby shop. They don't have the Black Icon certified hobby shop. So this is not a card shop. So it's quite possible that this person saw this play, bought out the TCG player copies they could find, graded them, sold them, and here are the ones that, they didn't think were gradable. And so you might be, sort of eating out of the bottom of the barrel as you're trying to make these plays. And so you have to factor that in if you try to make them. So it's not as easy money as it might seem, although I imagine there's some play to be made there. Next up, we have another card out of the Dark Side of Dimensions Movie Pack Secret Edition, and this one has done nothing but climb in the past 3 months. You can see that, overall, if you look at a yearly trajectory, it went up, peaked, and after late December, sort of peaked New Year's time, a little before that, and then went down as things have been, and then is actually recovering recently, which is a trend that I've seen on a lot of cards. Obviously, the first ones we looked at in this video have not shown that trajectory, but this is an interesting card. I really like this one as well. I think they did an incredible job with the Dark Side of Dimensions Movie Pack Secret Edition. And this is an interesting one that, again, there might be some sort of play grading this card, because this is something that people who just casually are fans of the series, more so fans of the IP Yu-Gi-Oh! Than are, very specific or are advanced, or collectors who have been around for a while and have gotten into graded cards just through virtue of, they've done all the binder sets that they want to get at. They've collected all the binder cards, and then naturally the progression is to go from binder to graded cards, where graded cards sort of have this scarcity to them because not all the cards that come directly out of the pack are going to be in gem mint condition. In fact, most of them are not. And so, there's this artificial scarcity to them. All that to say that there are casual collectors who I think just, look on eBay for something that might be a very nice display piece, and they have a couple $100s to spend because that's not, a difficult thing for them to do. And they pick up, PSA 10s of these sorts of cards that, raw copies you can get for around $10, but PSA 10s I imagine are around $200 if I had to guess. Next up, we have this alternate art of Slifer the Sky Dragon. I actually think this is the best art of Slifer the Sky Dragon. I don't think there's one that even comes close to this. I think it's way better than this original art, to be honest. Although the original art looks incredible, it's iconic. I wish this had sort of the red card design instead of the brownish effect design. But you can see, again, the 3-month trajectory, and specifically you look at 1 month, you see that this card is really spiking, as you're starting to see with a lot of the collectibles that they had that period where they really went down, and recently they're starting to appreciate again. Maybe, it went a little too low. And we have Core TCG selling them for $4.99 with 14 of them available, so I can imagine that there are going to be quite a few of these selling in coming weeks and coming months. We're going to round this out with some more vintage stuff. We have Blue Eyes White Dragon out of LOB. This is a card that has done nothing but sort of plummet, as you can see with many of the vintage cards that we looked at earlier. Kind of the more common vintage cards, the ones with much larger supply, I think were the ones that were hyped up the most, and they're the ones that have taken the largest falls, to be completely frank. I've just filtered it to unlimited prices, but you can see that this is just, it went from a $120 card to, what is it now, $48. I could see this going back up, because if you filter by near mint, you can see that, you ignore those you start seeing unverified sellers, and then if you want verified sellers, it starts getting a little bit more difficult to get the card at $68. So this is one that you see the trajectory, it looks really poor, but you can imagine that this thing is starting to flatten out and might actually start going up again. So that's something to look out for. And that might be a trend with a lot of these vintage cards, is that people really dump them all at once, just trying to get all their position on these vintage cards with high supply. They wanted to just get out from underneath them, and now people have sort of eaten up that supply because people really, really want these cards, and they're starting to get a little bit more difficult to get. And so that's something to look out for. Next up, we have Gaia the Dragon Champion, another card at a LOB. This is one where it's still dirt cheap. You can find them for under $5. If we filter to unlimited, let's look at the trajectory, because this is not log scale. Yeah, you can see it's really just struggling, kind of just going out, although you're starting to see, as with a lot of these cards, it's starting to plateau a bit. And once you get through a bunch of these near mints, this is a card that there's a ton of demand for. Those can easily get eaten up, and you might start looking at higher prices on a card like this, which this is probably my favorite card out of LOB. I think Gaia the Dragon Champion is an incredible card. Just one of my favorites of all time. And then we're going to round this out with Maximum Gold. This is a set that came out, I think, towards the peak of collecting Yu-Gi-Oh cards, sort of this collectibles boom. And you can see displays are really far up. I think there are still supply chain issues with getting Maximum Gold out, and this thing was ripped to oblivion because there were so many people looking to collect cards at the time, and it had a lot of really interesting cards. It has the Blue Eyes White Dragon that collectors are going to be going after. It has Dark Magician. It has Red Eyes Black Dragon, all in their original artworks. And then it also has cards that players are looking for in Ash Blossom, Apollosa, Infinite Impermanence, Nibiru. It has a lot of those cards as well. So it was just overall a really nice reprint set that I think the consensus among figureheads online is that premium gold rares don't look good. But keep in mind, go back. If you are wondering what people really said about these things when they first saw them, everyone that I saw was, on board with these things. And I was too. Honestly, I still like how they look. I think they look incredible. I just wish they made them more difficult to pull. That's something they did in the OCG. They made them very difficult to pull. It was one per box. Or not very difficult, but difficult. And so, there were a bunch of cards that were printed in premium gold, and you only got one per box. And so you're looking at very difficult odds to get sort of the chase cards in this premium gold rarity. They decided to not do that in the TCG, make it a much more accessible rarity. I would have liked if they had made, kind of an intermediate gold rarity that allowed people to get these sorts of good reprints, but made it more difficult to get the premium gold rare, because the premium gold rare doesn't feel like it has a premium on it. It doesn't feel like a premium rarity. When you associate premium rarities like Starlight rares, collector rares with modern cards, premium gold rare is not something that even compares to a collector's rare, Starlight rare in terms of value. So let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. This was a bit of a longer one, but if you did, make sure to like and subscribe. It's been your boy Watomarmelon, and peace out.